Songwriters, welcome back to At Home Songwriting. I'm Chad Shank, and I'm super excited to have a special guest joining us today. Our guest today is Shane Adams. We are in for a treat to talk to Shane today. So Shane is the president of Artist Accelerator. He is a Nashville resident, and he's from Las Vegas originally. And he's an award-winning songwriter, producer. He's the author of the Singer-Songwriter's Guide to Recordings in the Home Studio. And his artists have hundreds of thousands of listens on streaming services. And Shane attended Berklee College of Music, and he became a founding instructor of Berklee Online, which I'm actually teaching with Berklee Online now. So I'm super pumped about that. He's also a songwriting and music production course developer. He developed Interlochen Online. He also has Grammy nominations, 2 of them, where he is nominated in the area of music educator. He also received the Tennessee Songwriters Association highest honor. He's received 2 Country Music Hall of Fame Top 10 Hitmaker awards for co-developing the Taylor Swift Education Center for Words and Music program. He's also internationally recognized as a songwriting expert, and he's a mentor of hundreds of aspiring and professional writers. And you know what? I am just ready to introduce him and have him bless us with his presence and with his songwriting information. So welcome to At Home Songwriting, Shane Adams. Shane, welcome to the channel. Hello.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It's so great to be here, Chad. How the heck are you, man?
I'm doing good. I know that you and I met originally when I was in one of your Berklee courses. I think it was harmony to start with. So you taught me all about modes and all of that stuff. So this is kind of full circle getting to have you on my channel.
Oh man, I'm so grateful to be here. I love talking about songwriting and all that the joy it can bring.
Yeah, and I know one time you and I think we had done a workshop for the Minnesota Association of Songwriters, and you said you're kind of the Johnny Appleseed of songwriting, and I love that. I love that. You're just going around the country, planting seeds, talking about songwriting.
spreading the good word with
Exactly.
a pot on my head.
But yeah, so I know, you've been a songwriter and an instructor and just kind of in music for a long time. Just to start off, kind of when did songwriting become a thing for you, and what was your, first kind of dive into songwriting?
Oh my gosh, I've always loved songwriting. When I was a kid, I want to say 8 or 9 years old. I remember specifically we were in Yosemite, and with my family, and had wandered off by myself, and it was so beautiful, and I'm like, I'm going to write a song about how beautiful it is, and I think I stole a Neil Diamond melody called Penny Arcade, and I, I can remember to this day. The sky is blue, the clouds are white, the mountains are purple. It's a beautiful sight, and I was just so proud of myself, and that I'd put this song together, um, and then many years later, I was in high school, and I went to my first concert, and at the Aladdin Theater for the Performing Arts, and I grew up in Las Vegas, and we went to see the band Journey, uh,
Awesome.
which I wasn't a huge fan of. Like I grew up in a very fairly conservative conservative home, so rock and roll, what leads to other things, So there's a pretty mellow playlist going
Yeah.
on. But anyway, we when the music started, and everybody stood up, and we were looking right over the piano player. A guy named Jonathan Kane had a big red grand piano, and it was just like that feeling, that a wash of music of thousands of people, with their lighters in the air, and just like I'm like, this is what I want to do. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and I didn't know how to do it. My dad was a dentist. I heard about Berklee through my choir teacher at my high school,
Hmm.
and I ordered a catalog, and I literally kept it underneath my pillow. And luckily, through the support of my dad, he says, this. My dad kind of thought I was going to grow up to be a dentist. He's like, Someday, like Simba,
Yeah, like keep
all
the
this will
legacy
be,
going, the
yeah,
dynasty,
all this will be yours, from the anesthesia to the, the root canal.
the
And I'm like,
drill.
I just don't. I'm like, Dad, I want to be a musician. He's like, oh, we'll make that happen. And it took many years past that. I feel like I got a late start in my mid 20s when I finally got into Berklee. I was working as a banker in Las Vegas, and was fairly successful at the time. Was studying to be a bank manager. Was going to get my own branch, and I'm like, that was my trajectory. And I thought, well, I was an okay musician. I was mediocre in many categories. And I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll apply to Berklee and get rejected. That way I can get on with my life. So I'm like, there's no way they're going to let me in. Um, I auditioned, sent in an audition tape, and had scored very low on everything. But I had this great interview with Stephen Lippman, I think it was his name, the director of admissions. He says, "Why should we let you in Berklee?" And I said, "Well, I might be the worst person to ever walk through those hallowed halls, uh, but I'm exactly who you want. I'm starting from ground zero. I know nothing, and I may not know as much as all the other people going there, but I will work harder than anybody there." And he goes, "That was a good answer." And so I got in, and I'm 25 years old, but I'm with all these brilliant 18 and 19-year-olds who've been playing music and writing and their entire lives. And so I always feel was behind, but I really appreciated it. I think because I started as a little later.
Yeah,
Fell in love with songwriting. I went to a Gillian Welch concert. She was a senior when I was a freshman,
awesome.
and she for those who don't know, she's a Grammy-winning singer-songwriter artist, and she just completely blew me away. And actually, I was depressed for a long time. I quit songwriting because of Gillian at
Wow.
Berklee, because I thought there's no way I'll be able to be that good. There's no, because I thought songwriting is something you're born with,
Mm.
and if you're not born with it, you might as well do something else. So I changed to arranging. I thought, what I'll do is I'll work for all those other talented people. And later on, a couple years later into the program, I took an intro to songwriting class with Pat Pattison, and another with Jimmy Kachulis. Some of my that became my mentors. And ironically, I ended up teaching their courses later on. And
Yeah.
I caught that fire. I'm like, oh, I can learn to do this. I can do this. And so I was in their offices every week, every office hour with multiple questions, and just burned through the songwriting program. And man, I'm making this like a gigantic story. Um, eventually, yeah, did really well in the songwriting department. Then moved to Nashville, where I had a bunch of friends living. Jumped right into the music industry there. Worked at publishing company. I've been hired and fired from a million places. So kind of, but all of that kept giving me experience. Learn how some publishing, copyright. Then at a record label, running a label. Then uh, being a song plugger, and then being just kind of all these things, from just survival skills. And then now
How did you how did you
here
get into instructing? How did you get into teaching all of this?
I am. Well, I was a thorn in the side of Pat Pattison and Jimmy Kachulis. And Pat Pattison and Jimmy Kachulis are really the Mount Rushmore of songwriting instruction in the world.
Yeah.
Pat is much more well known, I think, known for his lyrics, lyric instruction, and but Jimmy was this innovator of on the musical side of things, harmony, melody, um, and I just drove them crazy. I was in their face all the time, always on the phone. Pat famously just it's like, just get out of my office. I'm like, but I want to know. So I stayed very close with them once I graduated, and when they were developing the Berklee Online, this is 21 years ago, 22 years ago.
Yeah.
They invited me to be part of the development process, to be a guinea pig for the classes. What do you think? And then I ended up, like, I transcribed all of Pat's music for his classes. So if
Wow.
you take a Berklee class, any of the notation in any of the Pat Pattison classes, that's all done by me.
Who knew? That's awesome.
And then they both independently asked me if I wanted to teach their courses, and so I was the first non-Boston person to teach any Berklee course, because I was living in Nashville.
Awesome.
And
Cool.
yeah, and this year is my 20th year teaching for Berklee Online.
Awesome. Well,
Very.
as we talked about before we got started, I have the honor of actually teaching the Lyric Tools and Strategies course that
Yeah,
Pat created. So I'm super excited. I think it'll be a fun experience for me.
it's a blast. And Chad, for those of you watching Chad's podcast, his YouTube channel, Chad is immense. He's a phenomenal instructor. So you should all rush now to take his that class with Chad at Berklee. It's a phenomenal phenomenal fundamental course. That's one of the classes I recommend that everyone should take. Everyone should take that class when they go to Berklee Online.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So a lot of the people that do watch this channel, they're newer songwriters, they're people that are at home, they really just want to write better songs. Do you have advice for people that are just getting started, and how do you kind of coach people that are in that level of their songwriting journey? I
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
because I think you said that you used to think that songwriting you couldn't learn it, but I'm assuming that you now think that you can learn it. It's not just what you're, you know, gifted with at birth.
Absolutely. You can learn it. So here's some gems of wisdom that really came from finding out how much I didn't know. Some people call me a genius, but more in the sense of like, hey, genius, like, hey,
Awesome.
Einstein,
Yeah, yeah, like if you know, hey, yeah,
you figure that
definitely.
out by yourself. So one of the things that I realized, like, what I am a genius in is pointing out the obvious, acknowledging like the
Yeah.
sky is blue, that in my opinion, nobody is a beginning songwriter. And here's what I mean
Mm.
by that. We are each a unique collection of all of our favorite songs. We've been listening to music our entire lives. And when we are writing songs, we are really taking a deep dive into that Venn diagram of like all those songs that we know and love since childhood, whether we do it subconsciously or consciously. We're not starting out at zero,
Hmm.
but we fail to utilize those influences, even though they pop up subconsciously all the time in our music. So the first thing I tell every single client, every single one of my production clients, this is where we start. Every single songwriting client I take on, this is the first thing we do, is I have them make 2 top 10 lists. I have them make a list of their favorite songs from their childhood, their teen years, like 12 through 19 or 20, and like high school, like so very formative. Those guilty pleasures when you love music not because it was a great song, but because like your friend. Oh, here's an example. Man, this came up the other day. So I was a freshman in high school. I was in men's choir. The geekiest of the geeks in my high school. Its name was Basic High School in Las Vegas. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Totally basic. Yep.
Basic high school, and the president of the choir was a guy named Gilbert Baker, who was also on the football team, and he's like the coolest guy. He was just he was so amazing and cool. And so he gave us some legitimacy in this choir program. We had to drive to some event. I think we were singing at a nursing home, and he's like, Adams, come drive with me. And he had this really cool Mustang, I remember. And I sit in, and he's like, what kind of music do you listen to? And I'm like, well, and as I said earlier, I grew up in a very conservative home. So, the hardest music we listened to at the time was like John Denver and, Kenny Rogers.
You guys were wild back then.
Wow, the Sound of Music was like a big thing, and he's like, that music sucks. You need to listen to Loverboy. And he goes, and he puts in this tape, and there's a song, this 80s rock band called Get Lucky. And I remember on his Alpine stereo, and I was just like, Get Lucky coming in and filled in. And I remember thinking like, well, I guess I'm a Loverboy fan now.
That's awesome.
And now whenever I listen to Loverboy, I still, I was introducing it to my daughter just like literally weeks ago. And I'm like, it just takes me back to that time of that freedom with, the wind blowing through your hair, rolling down the window, speeding in this Mustang. And I didn't like Loverboy because it had a great chord progression, or because it used secondary dominance, or because it was because Gilbert, the president of the band's choir, liked it and told me that if I didn't like it, I would suck as a human being, and I didn't want to suck. So, I had to,
Yeah.
I had to like Loverboy, or Standing Up at the Journey concert. Like, I did, I liked their ballads, but I didn't like any of their rock songs. But like, I was moved by that emotional connection to the music, and so you have to seek out the emotional nuggets in what you like, because that should be the compass. It's not how I teach you in a Berklee class, hey, you need to do this to be a good songwriter. No, what do you like? Again, you're a unique combination. You're a Venn diagram of all these favorite songs, and right there in the middle is who you are as an artist. And until you take a deep dive into those songs, you don't really know what you're doing. So, should I have an AABB rhyme scheme, or should I have again, secondary dominance, or whatever it is, or harmonic rhythm? Like, no, like, what is your favorite songs doing? What are your favorite songs doing? And then use that as a guide. And now you'll be writing songs that you actually like.
I think that's such a great advice too, because you have some people who always chase whatever the fad is, and
Absolutely.
it's like, if you're chasing the fad, you're always like 2 steps behind. I think the key is you really have to love it, because that's where the real magic happens. But I think, I hear some people that I teach in my own workshops and things, they think that you can either be commercial or creative. Like, you can't be both at the same time. Like, you can't be original and use like technique. So they kind of think like, well, I'm not going to pay attention to what Chad's saying about rhyme schemes and melodic rhythm, and why do my verses have to match? Why do I have to think about that? What is your answer to stuff like that? Like, how do you sort of meld those two together, where there's like the creative side, but then there's like the sort of the technical side?
Well, the way I view it is, I view songwriting really like watching a movie. Like, there's a lot of similarities between writing a song and writing a screenplay, and watching a movie. And when you write a song, or I'm sorry, when you're watching a movie, the only thing that matters is what's in camera. That's and just outside that little box is a microphone hanging, and the director, if it's a good director, have chosen the correct lenses, the correct type of lighting, the location, the cast, all of these things go into making this film. They'll have a call sheet. These actors need to show up at this time. Well, we're doing a medium shot, but it needs to be long distance, so we're going to use this particular lens on this camera on this day, and it's going to be a dolly shot. So we have to, so they have all of these elements that are going on outside of that frame to create that moment. And for me, the knowledge of rhyme scheme, the knowledge of all of those things inform what I put in that frame. And again, using your favorite songs as your guide, as your compass, because you don't want to make an intellectual connection with people. You want to make an emotional connection through your song. So what do you like in your favorite music? What is the rhyme scheme of an Eagles? So for like take the Eagles. So what's a characteristic of an Eagles song? Are you an Eagles fan? Well, Eagles have very, very long, intricate lines. So they will have for instance, a typical song section has 4 lines, and each line has 2 measures long. And so line 1, line 2, and line 3, 4. But what the Eagles will do is they will take their lyrics will continue over 2 lines. So they'll have 2 lines of lyrics over 4 lines of music. It's just like this interpolation, and it creates this kind of landscape. This if you listen to like the Hotel California, you're traversing this this long phrase to get to the end of the phrase, versus songs that have more kind of punchy lyrics. Now, which one do you like? Which type of music moves you? Do you like to do? There's certainly room in the world for writing lots of pop songs, for writing like Max Martin, the very famous songwriter and producer, who's produced a million, Taylor Swift and Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears and Pink, and he's just all over the charts. His writing, his melodic writing, is so precise. He does not vary from one verse to the next. And what that is a choice of camera. It's a choice of the actors. It's he's making all those choices, and it has this impact. Versus someone who has a looser mentality towards their music. There's room for all of those things, but unless you look at your favorite songs, you don't know. I find a lot of we'll call them beginning songwriters, even though I literally just said moments ago,
yeah,
beginning songwriter. So I'm hypocritical as well as a genius. Ding ding.
There you go. Thanks, genius.
Thanks. Yeah. Hey, genius. See what I mean? Like Einstein. What was I saying? They have preconceived notions of what a song is or how to write a song, and they have they will religiously follow what they think a song should be. There are people every single song needs to have a pre-chorus. You cannot have a song without a pre-chorus. Or you know what? Hey, there has to be a twist in the bridge. And unless I have a twist in the bridge, my song is not going to work. And yet they fail to recognize there are hundreds of their favorite songs that don't do any of those things.
Yeah.
So for instance, going back to Journey. All right. So I'm a huge proponent of A B C. Verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. I love that form. I love that form with all my heart. Okay, one of my favorite songs, Journey, Don't Stop Believing, which we've all heard a bazillion times in our life. Journey, Don't Stop Believing only has one chorus in it. It has one chorus at the end of the song, and you only hear Don't Stop Believing 3 times. The words Don't Stop Believing, we only hear that 3 times at the end of the song. And so it's verse, pre-chorus, verse, pre-chorus, verse, guitar solo, chorus. So there's only one. Now, how can I ignore that song form? So, if I get on my soapbox, says, okay, the only type of song that needs to be written has to be verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That is the Mandalorian. That is the way. I'm ignoring one of my favorite songs of all time. In fact, once I noticed that, all of a sudden I started to notice this pattern. There's all these other songs that have one chorus at the end that I love, that really move me. And that's important information for me. Because if it moves me, I want to write songs that move me. And so I need to pay attention to that.
So that makes me think, when people are asking for feedback, when they're playing a song for someone else, and maybe the song does have an interesting or non-traditional structure or song form, I think that's where if you do study your favorites, you can have that confidence when someone tries to tell you
Absolutely.
that you can't write a song like that. Because a lot of feedback that we get from other songwriters, I think, is personal taste, right? So you have to
Yeah.
learn like what's the difference of like, oh, am I really missing the mark with my song? From maybe a story flow perspective, or like maybe people aren't understanding what I'm trying to say. I think that's valuable feedback, but when you hear people say, and I'm guilty of even giving feedback that tries to push my thoughts on other people too, you know what I mean? So yeah, so you're making me think about what makes a good song.
Yeah. So the way I love doing song critiques. That's one of my absolute favorite things. And I mentor several groups, and that's one of the big things we do. And what I can tell people is, here is my experience of your song. What the choices you made brought you to this point. Because another thing about, again, beginning songwriters, which don't exist,
Just say
is
songwriters, yeah.
we have, and I put myself in that category. We have a preconceived notion, or I'm sorry, we have all the back knowledge of what went into that song. We know the backstory, we know the characters, we know what led up to that point. We know, and so we stand up at the open mic, say, okay, here's my song called this, and this is what it's about. And then you tell people what it's about, and then you do the song. See, I don't like doing that, because it's only what's in the frame. It's only what's in
Yes.
that shows up on the screen. And so as a listener, I'd say, here's my experience with what your song is doing. Here's how. So, for
Right.
instance, some lyric advice I love getting is the idea of putting lines that have context first.
Yeah.
Meaning, lyrics that if you take a sheet of lyrics, like in a Word document or a Google document, and you gray out all of the lyrics except for the first line, and so you only see the first line, and then you read, okay, what does that line give me? And then what's the second line and the third? Because we are getting information linearly in a song, and
Yeah.
so we don't have the luxury of all of that at once. We don't comprehend a song all at once. And so lines that inform or give you more information can make other lines stronger down the line. Especially, so for instance, if I said something like, "Man, I had a really great day. Had a great day today. I am so happy." All right. As a human being, you're like, "Oh, that's fantastic, Shane." like
Right.
I'm happy that you're happy, but there's no connection. But if I say something like, imagine my first line being like, "Today I won the lottery. I'm
Yeah.
happy," right?
Yeah.
Um, that provides context for that happiness, and now there's a connection between you and me. Or um, I was accepted to, I just became a Berklee online instructor. I came full circle, and now I'm teaching uh, uh, lyrics, tools and strategies for Berklee. Man, I'm so
Yeah.
happy. That gives me context, so I know how to react to that emotion. So one of the things I'll do in all my lyrics, I'll go through and I'll divide them up into lines that give context and lines that need context. And then I put the
Mm.
lines that give context at the beginning. And this is really counterintuitive to how we are taught in schools to write term papers, or to write articles, even telling jokes. We're taught to lead up to the most important thing.
Right. Right.
So usually people's songs gather steam, but what happens is you've wasted all those lines. Where if you put the most important things first, it'll inform all those other things, and you could make something very, very powerful through the process of building starting with the most context, building forward. Now, after that diatribe, I will. So that's a technique that I use, and I think it's a powerful technique. But knowing that technique, that's a choice. So maybe I want to keep people in the dark in my song. So I know not to do that. Maybe I want to lead them on a little bit. Maybe I want there to be a feeling of more mystery. Maybe I want it to be more poetic and more amorphous. So knowing that concept of context versus no context actually gives me two choices. And it's not a line in the sand that like, oh, I have to do this in every song. I can say, hey, if I want to create this emotion in my listeners, I can pull out that camera lens.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that is, because with my group, we do online song shares and stuff too. And I try to, at the beginning, tell people that we're listening not so much about like, what word did you choose? And that's what I hear people doing too. Like, am I saying the right thing? Am I using the right words? And it's like, it's not about the right words. It's about the meaning that's behind them. Right. And I think you said it earlier where it's all about what emotion are we communicating? And that's where the powerful songwriting comes from.
Exactly.
I think you said you want it to be emotional, not intellectual, and that's a great way to say it.
Absolutely. And believe me, I am a music theory nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I love talking about tensions and substitute dominance. I can talk for days dealing with techniques, but at the end of the day, it does not matter. Here's another example. And so Pat Pattison, one of his go-to words is a term called prosody, and prosody is where and people have misused this word. And part of my Johnny Appleseed mission is to clarify my version of what I think prosody is. And prosody is where you use elements in the construction of a song to amplify your lyrics, to amplify the emotions of a song. So what is it? What is a construction element? Construction elements are your chord progressions, anything mechanical, anything that goes into a song that isn't the lyrics. It could be the rhyme scheme. It could be the melody shape. It could be the are you choosing a minor key or a major? Like Happy Birthday is in a major key for a reason, right?
Yeah, like
Happy Birthday. Like put it in Phrygian. And then you have a
it becomes a dirge at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is these elements become what I call your facial expressions, because you can say a phrase and change its facial expression, and you change the meaning. Like if I said, "Oh, Chad Shank, I love you." Okay, what is that? What's implied there? Well, that I love Chad Shank, which I do. Chad, you're amazing. But if I'm like,
thank you,
Chad Shank, oh yeah, I love you. There's sarcasm there, or like, oh, Chad,
you're a
Shane.
genius. You're a
genius. Yeah. The word genius. Like, man, Shane Adams is a genius. Like if that was written on a page, and I quoted like, like 9 out of 10 of my students say Shane Adams is a genius. And you read that on a page, but when really they're going like, yeah, Shane Adams is a genius. So prosody changes that expression. So, for instance, I recently wrote a song, very, very sadly, a dear friend of mine, who I consider a brother, his son tragically drowned on New Year's this year, and I consider that the son, a nephew of mine. We're not blood related, but I loved him like loved him like a nephew. And they asked me if I would sing a song at his service, and I thought, yeah, and I thought I'd write a song, and not to be too personal about about this young man. He had his issues with some substance issues, and which was not the reason for the untimely death, but it informed his passing. Some repercussions there, and So I thought, what kind of prosody can I put in the song? And so I have this passage. He loved music, and there was two specific things I wanted to do. Is I wanted to embody the seven stages of grief um,
Hmm.
in some kind of capacity in the song. And so what I did in the very first verse, I'm gonna look this up really quick so I can. Uh, there is, and again, this is really silly, and no one else knows about this except for me, and now your fine listeners. Hit the first verse. Your life was like your music, and your music just like you. The rebellion of Led Zeppelin on stage with Motley Crue. Quiet Riot, Kiss the Beatles, AC/DC, Yes, and Rush. Your concert may be over, but your rock and roll's in us. All right, so I have this verse, but really, the seven stages of grief are represented in the bands I named.
Interesting.
So the first stage of grief is shock, and so Led Zeppelin is shock.
Yeah.
Quiet. Yeah, shock. Quiet. Uh, yeah, Led Zeppelin, Motley Crue.
Motley
That's
Crue.
shock.
Yep.
Um, Quiet Riot
Like
is
anger.
anger. Quiet Riot. Kiss. Kiss is bargaining because kissing, but
Yeah.
and Rush, which is depression.
Mhm.
Quite right. AC/DC. Yeah, oh, Yes is the band.
Like
Yes is
acceptance.
acceptance.
Yeah.
And AC/DC. Yes, and Rush. Yeah, and Rush is hope. I'm sorry, I think I said that wrong. But anyway, so these are just kind of little elements that are peppered in song, and nobody knows that except for me. But I know that that's my camera. That's what I chose to focus through this song. In fact, remember how I said that I'm a huge proponent of verse, chorus, bridge, chorus.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy personally when there's another verse after a bridge. Like I love where a bridge leads right into the final chorus. I mean, and I would say 90% of my songs do that very thing.
Yeah.
Well, this young man, the loss disrupted everything. He was a disruptor of people. He would throw things into chaos, and so to represent that, I added a third verse, which is something that I never do because it adds this element of chaos, and it adds an element of like I wish he was with us longer. It makes the song longer,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
so by having an extra verse makes my song just like I will wish he was in my life longer. He was taken away too quickly, and every time I stand on from my ivory tower and say, "Hey, you should never have a verse after a bridge," every one of my students would go, "But your song literally does that," and it gives me an opportunity to talk about this young man and
Yeah.
say, "Well, sometimes you do things that are hard."
But I think the point here, what you're trying to say is like all of these decisions are done on purpose though, for a specific reason. Because I see some people that will write 4 to 5 verses sometimes in a song, almost like they think that that's what it takes to tell their story, and
Right.
maybe that is what it takes to tell the story. But I always think, is that really telling the story the way that you want to tell it though? Don't just include 5 verses because maybe there's a Dylan song that has 5 verses. Like Dylan probably did that for a reason, so why are you doing that as a songwriter,
Right.
right? Like why it's that decision you make.
You're absolutely right. So, what songs do you know that you love that have 5 verses? And if the song has 5 verses, why is that song? All right, so let's talk about five. And again, I'm 5 verse songs. Stairway to Heaven is
Mm,
one. There's one.
yep.
All right. Bohemian Rhapsody is another one. And actually, Bohemian Rhapsody doesn't have a chorus. There's no chorus in Bohemian
Right.
Rhapsody.
Yeah, that's just different sections. It's different
So yeah,
movements.
so that means Bohemian Rhapsody is a terrible song. No, Hotel California is one. America Pie
Yeah.
has. Okay, all right, so there's my pantheon, my Greek gods of songs that have more than three verses. Okay, how, why are those songs iconic? And out of the millions of songs written, how come there's only like 10 that work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Like
that's important.
Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, I think, has more
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. That's a great example.
Yeah.
Um, and so, uh, what is that effect that you're having? So, if you're doing five verses because you think you need to have five verses to tell your story, versus no pun intended, versus how can I tell my story concisely, and am I involving? Am I connecting with my listeners when I make that choice? And if the answer is no, you're doing the song a disservice. You need to do what's best for the song, not what's best for your ego. And
Mm. Yeah.
the song is number one. The song is a temple. It's a holy place. A well-written song is a holy place to enter. And why are you sullying it with your ego because you think you need to, again, like have five verses? But again, uh, ideally you've gone through your top 20 songs, your top 100 songs. How many of those songs have, if every song on that list has five or more verses, then probably, yeah, that's a good, you should be doing that. You know,
Yeah. I also
congratulations.
I'm a big proponent of listening to genres that you're not used to too, and trying to just learn. I mean, you don't have to like it, like you just have to learn from it. Like, what are some of the things that you could use in your own song? So I kind
Oh,
of been promoting that as well.
you know how many times I've been to seminar and I've heard people like, oh, I hate rap music.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, there's more in common with rap and country music than there are differences. Like,
Oh, 100%. Yep.
like, um, so yeah, I agree. I concur that it's great advice. Listen outside your box. You might learn something.
Awesome. Well, Shane, I think we could talk for hours, but here as we start to wrap up for today, like what are you working on lately? I know before we got on, you said you're doing a lot of producing. What's going on in your world right now?
Yeah, so yeah, I love producing songwriters. I love taking their songs to the next level and applying all those writing things into arrangements. And there are two types of producers in the world, in my opinion. There are those that have a particular sound, and if you want that sound, you go to that guy. And then the other type is, who are you as a artist? Again, that same Venn diagram of all your favorite songs. Right in the middle is you, and I like that kind of exploration. So I'm doing a
Yeah.
ton of producing. I'm working on another book for Berklee. I have a book out called Music Production, the Singer Songwriter's Guide to
Home
Recording in the Home
recording.
Studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm working on a book about songwriting tricks to called Your Next Song, which is really problem solve when you get what to do when you get stuck.
Awesome.
I'm doing seminars all over the world. I was just in Bucharest, in Romania a couple months ago. I was in Mexico, and in LA, and I do things all over the spread the word. You can hear some of my music on iTunes. I put out a thing of some of my film scores called Even the Score, which you can get
Cool.
on iTunes. And yeah, just trying to stay busy and relevant.
Awesome. That's all we can hope for. That's what we all need to work on, right? Just stay busy, do your thing.
Well, if I could end with my favorite quote,
Yeah.
um, uh, Yip Harburg, who wrote the lyrics to "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," which is one of my favorite songs. That's in my top five. He said, uh, lyrics make you think a thought. Music makes you feel a feeling, but a song makes you feel a thought.
Awesome.
And I discovered that quote last year, which is weird, having been in the industry and talking songwriting forever. I can't believe I've never heard that before, but it's such a beautiful, a song makes you feel a thought. And that's what I want to give to my listeners. That's what I want to give to my audience. Am I blowing them away with my knowledge? No. Like I want to connect through emotions. I want to have a mutual emotional experience with them. That, to me, that's the essence of what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Well, Shane, thanks so much for being on At Home Songwriting. I appreciate it.
Oh man, Chad, thank you so much, and good luck to all your listeners. Good luck to you teaching at Berklee, and it's just a joy to meet with you always. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for Shane Adams joining us here at Home Songwriting. If you would like to learn more about songwriting, check out this other video and be sure to hit like and subscribe. It helps us reach more songwriters like you, and hopefully we'll see you at the next video.